In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front backing shield on this Ford Excursion. This sits behind the front wheel bearing and hub assembly, so we have to remove all that, including the brakes, to get to it. So let's get started. Use a 21mm socket and remove all 8 lug nuts, and then we can pull the wheel off. We have to disconnect the ABS sensor wire, and to do that we actually have to move the fender liner out of the way a little bit because it goes up behind it and up all the way to right about here. So let's take the fasteners off so we can at least peel away the back of it to get access. Use a 5.5mm socket to remove the screws that hold the fender liner onto the fender itself. There are supposed to be several. My next one is actually a Phillips head, but it's supposed to be a 5.5, just like the previous one. On the inside right here, there's an 8mm headed screw or bolt. Remove that. Keep following the edge along. You'll see another 5.5mm screw at the front. And further in the front, underneath the fender liner, an 8mm headed screw. Now pull the fender liner slightly down. Also push it back at the same time so you can get it off of the fender. Take that off. Following the ABS sensor wire up, you'll see where it plugs in, and this is why we had to remove the fender liner. Push on that tab and disconnect it from the electrical connector. Following it down on the frame, let's unhook it from the retainer. Just use a trim tool and pop it off. And then continue following it along. On the brake hose, you'll see it's clipped on. Just pull on the wire, that'll unclip it from the brake hose. Just like that. Now let's take the caliper and bracket assembly off of the front axle. Use a 21mm socket, remove the top bolt and the bottom bolt, and we'll take the whole thing, put it back on the leaf spring so it doesn't hang by the brake hose while we do the work. With this bolt taken out, leave it in a couple threads so it can hold the caliper while we take off the bottom. Now support the caliper with one hand, and with the other take that bolt out. With that out, you can remove the caliper and bracket assembly, flip it over, and we'll put it right on that leaf spring, just like that. Now you can remove the rotor. If it's seized, use a hammer, tap between the lug studs to break it free. Hopefully yours is not though. Set it aside. Now we have to remove the locking hub assembly. To do this, you'll need a 3mm hex bit. Sometimes it's a 4mm. I don't have either. What I do have though is a T20 torque socket, which will fit perfectly in here, and for very low torque applications will work just fine. And I'm going to remove all of these screws that'll allow me to pull the locking hub assembly off. When it comes to these locking hubs, if you have the factory vacuum hubs, it'll just have a snap ring around it. Ours are no longer factory hubs. They are manual locking hubs with a few Allen bolts around them. And removing those will get the cover off. Sometimes these screws are stuck in here. This one is severely corroded. What I'm going to do is take a punch that fits on the outside of the head of the screw. Just give it a tap. Sometimes that helps break it free. Now take the cap off of the locking hub mechanism. Continuing with our locking hubs, because like I said, these are no longer factory hubs, we have a ring that goes around the entire perimeter. Typically with the factory ones, the entire thing pulls out. So what you want to do at this point, if you have these Warner hubs, you are going to have to stick a pick or a screwdriver behind this ring and just pop it out so that you can unclip it the rest of the way. There it goes. Grab it with some pliers and just pull it out very gently. Try not to bend it or damage it so we can reuse it. All right, there's that. Now the entire hub assembly should want to slide out. However, it is kind of tricky to hold on to, so if you can't get it with some pliers, what you can sometimes do is stick the Allen bolts back in and use those to pull. Take this out. This is what it should look like if you still had that manual or the factory locking hub with the snap ring. Once you pull the entire thing out, you'll be left with this. Use some snap ring pliers and remove the snap ring that holds on all of these washers. Squeeze that. Be careful so it doesn't go flying. Set that aside safely. We will be reusing it. Now you can take off all of these washers, which if you need a magnet for these, you can use that. There's a metal washer, then a plastic washer that is basically a hex cutout like a nut. And then this is actually a third washer back here. Need a magnet for that one. There it is. Set that aside. From the back side of the knuckle, you'll see 4 21mm mounting nuts, 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. We'll have to remove all 4 to get this wheel bearing undone off of the knuckle. Doesn't matter where you start. This one came off with a stud, that's totally fine. Okay, there it is. All right, one more to go. All right, there's our last one. Now pull the wheel bearing off. And there it is. Take that backing shield with it. Now get the ABS sensor through the backing shield. There's the backing shield. We have to clean off the corrosion that's on the knuckle, so that way the new wheel bearing can seat nice and even. Depending on how severe yours is, you could use a wire brush or a sanding disc. I'm going to go with a sanding disc, but keep in mind you don't want to have anything that's so abrasive that it'll actually eat the metal that's behind the rust. You just want to create a flat surface for the wheel bearing to sit on. After that, we're going to do a whole lot of cleaning because all of this corrosion in here shouldn't be here either. Then we're going to coat everything with some anti-seize to prevent further corrosion. With all of this cleaned up, let's rinse it off with some brake parts cleaner. Now apply a layer of anti-seize, not just where you cleaned off, but also inside of here where the wheel bearing sits. That way it's not going to seize up in the future or at least cause any corrosion. On the axle shaft, we're going to apply some grease, especially right back here on the base of it where the wheel bearing is going to ride. There are needle bearings on the wheel bearing to support the weight of the axle. So you want to make sure this is nicely greased up. And of course, apply some to the rest of it as well. That way it's not completely dry, not just for corrosion purposes, but so that everything can function correctly. We'll add some more over here once the locking hub goes on, but I want to at least have the needle bearing area covered. Because the fasteners for our wheel hub came off together, stud and nut, I'm going to separate them by putting them in my vise and removing the nut off of the stud. And then I'm going to put all 4 studs back in the wheel hub on the back of it. I'm going to snug them up a little bit with some pliers, and this will be ready for installation. It helps to put a little bit of silicone paste or grease on the O-ring that's on the side or around the wheel bearing on the back of it. That way it'll slide in a lot easier. Now put the ABS wire through the backing shield. And try to line up the backing shield with the studs, and of course have the ABS wire come through, just like that. Lift this up so it's out of the way. Now take the wheel hub and bearing assembly with the backing shield, slide it on, just like that. Press it on all the way. Right now it's actually not seated. We need that yellow O-ring to seat all the way. And that's where it's helpful to have the silicone paste on it. You can take a small rubber mallet, just help it go in all the way by tapping it. All right, that's slid in all the way. Let's start on the mounting nuts on the back of the wheel hub now. With all of them started, let's snug them up in a cross pattern, and then we're also going to torque them in a cross pattern, but let's snug them first. The torque on these is 133 foot-pounds, also in a cross pattern like I mentioned earlier. On the outside of the hub, we're going to have to put some grease right here where the splines of the locking hub ride, as well as on the axle. There is some already on the axle, so we'll just add some more. You obviously don't have to fill this, but you do have to coat these splines. That way everything can mesh together properly when you engage and disengage your locking hub. Next, get your combination of metal washer, plastic washer, and then metal washer again. Slide this over all the way in. Let's put the snap ring back on. Careful so it doesn't go flying. Once again, these are under quite a bit of pressure. Push it all the way in, and when you feel it seat, let go of your snap ring pliers and double check it that it's seated all the way around. Now it's time to put the locking hub back. Line it up with the splines. There we go, just guide it in place. If needed, you can guide it in with a rubber mallet. Just make sure you're careful. Try to tap on the outer edge just to seat it fully. Because we have this aftermarket locking hub, we're going to have to put this ring in, which is what locks it in. Now, for these particular ones, what you want to do, it's the best idea to do this, is to line up the end of it on the outer part with the cutout on it. This is going to allow you to remove it a whole lot easier next time this has to be serviced. And this you're kind of just going to have to push into position. Just bring it around just like this. There it goes. And that is now locked in. We have the end of it lined up right here so that next time we can just grab it and pull it down. On this particular model of locking hub, we have the cap that needs to go on. There's either an O-ring around it, or you're going to want to put a little bit of RTV right in this groove here where it contacts the hub so it can seal up completely from any water or debris that might get in there. At this point, line this up, and now install your bolts. Of course, if you have the original locking hub, you wouldn't have these bolts, you would just have a snap ring that goes around it, and you'd want to put that on to lock it in. Snug these up gently in a cross pattern. Give them just a little bit extra by hand, not even an eighth of a turn. You just want them snug. There's 6 of them, and they hold on pretty tight on here. Just want to make sure they're even and that this cap is well seated. All right. Now let's coat the hub surface in some anti-seize. Avoid spraying it on the lug studs or getting it on if you have the brushed kind. If you get any on, that's no big deal. Just wipe it off, but don't load them up with it. My rotor is new, so I don't have to worry about rust here, but if yours is used, sand it down, clean it off so that it has a nice flat surface to mount on the hub with. Install your rotor. If you got a bunch of fingerprints on it, clean off both the outer and the inner braking surface with some brake parts cleaner and a clean paper towel or a rag. To hold the rotor on a little bit better, I'm going to use an old axle nut and a lug nut and basically squish it up against the hub temporarily so it doesn't flop around while I try to put on the caliper. It doesn't have to be tight, just snug. Install the caliper. Have your bolts ready, start them on. Snug them up. The torque for these two is between 141 foot-pounds and 191 foot-pounds. I'm just going to go for a higher number, 190. Resecure the ABS sensor to the brake line or brake hose. Both of these clips. And then on the frame right here, there's an oval slot. That's where this push clip will go in. Make sure you push it in all the way. That way it's nicely secured. Go up right below the fender and plug in the ABS sensor. Make sure it clicks. Let's install the fender liner. Be careful not to pinch any of the wires that are there as you try to install this. That way they don't break. Push it further back than you want it, just so you can bring it up underneath the fender. And once you do that, you should be able to push it up in place. Just like that. Let's reinstall the bolts that hold it on. There's an 8mm headed bolt at the front. Another 8mm bolt goes right back here. I have to push this up a little bit to have it lined up. I gotta. And let's put in all of the 5.5mm screws that go along the fender. Let's get the wheel back on. Put on all 8 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern to seat the wheel evenly. And then also in a cross pattern, we're going to torque them to 148 foot-pounds. 148 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. There you have it, wheels torqued. Take it for a road test and don't forget to get an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.